I'm tapping in. Thank y'all for tapping in the Yocuzpodcast, man. Thank you for tapping in. Listen, man. Y'all done tune in. Y'all done tune into Yocuzpodcast. Thanking y'all for supporting the page, man. Keep supporting the page, and I'm gonna keep giving y'all bangers after bangers after bangers, man. Thank y'all for tapping into that Yocuzpodcast. Listen, man, make sure y'all subscribe, like, and drop a comment after this episode right here, man, because we lit. Thank y'all for tapping in the Yocuzpodcast. So listen, this the topic that we on today. Ron tried to stab himself in the neck after the verdict, man. You hear me? The man got found guilty, then he tried to stab himself in the neck. Did he try to stab himself in the courtroom, or he tried to stab himself when he got back to his cell? But listen, I ain't gonna hold y'all up. I'm gonna let y'all see what's going on, and thank y'all for tapping into that Yocuzpodcast. Make sure y'all pay attention. Roll them J's up, pull that drink, and pay attention what's going on. Y'all done tune into that Yocuzpodcast. We lit.
To Alive now from Fox, I'm Andy Mack. Let's turn our attention right now to Fort Pierce, Florida, in the trial of the case involving Ryan Routh, as the man accused of trying to assassinate President Trump learned his fate today in a Florida courtroom. We're going to be joined right now by Fox's Connor Hansen. Connor, what did we learn?
Hi, Andy. The jury only deliberated for about 2 hours today before unanimously finding Ryan Routh guilty on all 5 charges. That was followed by some dramatic moments in the courtroom, even with Routh trying to drive.
For those that don't know who Ryan is the one that tried to kill Donald Trump. See, I told y'all I'm going to hit y'all with bangers, man. This the one that trying to assess Donald Trump, man. Make sure y'all tap in, man, because we lit tonight. Let's go.
A pen into his own neck before he was restrained by U.S. Marshals.
Keep walking.
A Florida jury finding Ryan Routh guilty of trying to kill President Trump at his golf course last year. The trial lasted just over 2 weeks. And now Routh has been convicted on 5 federal charges, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate and assaulting a federal officer. During closing arguments, prosecutors told jurors there's no doubt it was Routh who was camped out at the golf course with a rifle. Quote, evidence has shown one thing and one thing only. The defendant wanted Donald Trump.
Hold on, Joe. He camped out at the golf course waiting for Donald Trump to come, Joe, for he could kill Donald Trump. Are you for real? He slept at the golf course. So you mean tell me Donald Trump ain't got no security at his golf courses? Man, pay attention, man. We lit.
Trump dead. They say he excessively stalked Trump's location and wrote a rap song about killing the then presidential candidate with a sniper rifle after he was arrested by the FBI.
The narrative here is really, really tight. They presented it in a very, very compelling way.
Routh, who has been representing himself, made a series of unusual requests throughout the trial, including challenging President Trump to a, quote, beatdown session. He spent the majority of his closing arguments trying to prove there was no intent to kill because a gun was never fired.
I do think we're going to see appeals here in terms of Mr. Routh's ability to represent himself, although he made that choice.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you.
And on top of these federal charges, Routh still faces state charges for terrorism and attempted murder. Andy?
Thank you so much, Connor. And of course, we talked about that, the dramatic moments in the aftermath. He was trying to stab himself with the pen. We understand that his daughter and his son, Sarah and Adam, were present in the courtroom. Were we able to speak with them, and what was their reaction potentially?
Yeah, Andy, right after that moment where Routh tried to drive the pen into his own neck, that was followed by an outburst by his daughter screaming he's trying to kill himself and some other things. She and Routh.
Oh, the daughter seen him try to kill himself in the courtroom after he got that time. That's crazy. So his daughter was watching him the whole time. Dog, he's about to take himself out, dog. That's crazy. In the courtroom, Joe. Let's go.
Son were both in court. We're told his daughter took extensive notes throughout the trial. She was obviously mobbed by media on the way out of this courthouse today, screaming at them to get out of her face, using some profanities. She was eventually put in a car with her brother and drove off from the courthouse.
All right, very good. A conclusion to this, but obviously we'll see what the appeals process allows for. All right, Connor, thank you so much. I appreciate your time here on Live Now.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, thank you so much. All right, great reporting there as always. And we're getting some of those dramatic sketches from inside of the courtroom of that moment. I want to put them up again here on Live Now from Fox and just reiterate some of that of what Connor Hansen reported as the man who attempted to assassinate Donald Trump at a Florida golf course last year tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen shortly after being found guilty on all counts Tuesday. Officers quickly swarmed him, dragged him out of the courtroom. It was a jury of 5 men, 7 women who found Ryan Routh guilty on all counts, but he was facing about 2 hours of deliberation. The jurors were on their way out of the courtroom after the verdict was announced when Routh grabbed a pen off the desk and tried to stab himself in the neck.
Crazy.
And there was also some concern about just the use of him in terms of his own defenses. There was standby counsel present for that. So we'll see if the appeals process continues to move forward. We'll keep an eye on that story here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, President Trump was also asked about this, the guilty verdict on all of those counts at the United Nations as he was meeting with different world leaders. Let's take you out right now to this quick soundbite as a reporter pressed him on this.
And I'm guilty. What is your response?
Well, I'm very appreciative of the justice that was given and the way it was handled by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and everybody that it's been, and their team of people. It was really well handled, and it's very important. You can't let things like that happen. Nothing to do with me, but a president or even a person. You can't allow that to happen. And so justice was served, and we'll see what happens. But I very much appreciate the judge and jury and everybody on that. It was so professionally handled, and it's great.
All right, justice was served. That's the words from President Trump about this would-be assassin being found guilty on all counts after just a few hours of deliberation by the jury of his peers there in Fort Pierce, Florida. Again, just want to put this up here on Live Now from Fox.
So listen. They found him guilty. He took the lawyer pen and tried to stab himself, but his daughter said, no, he trying to kill himself. And that's when they grabbed him in the courthouse, bro, in the room where they gave him the time at, bro. Do you hear this shit, bro? The man tried to stab himself in the courtroom, bro. Come on, bro. He already had that plan because he already knew he was going to get that time, bro.
Fox News talking about it, saying Trump's response to it, saying it was really well handled, is very important. You can't let things like that happen. Justice was served. And of course, also of note, Ryan Routh did not himself take the stand in this case. There were plenty of perplexing motions, questions by him during the kind of jury selection process and throughout this trial. The judge trying to balance it, allowing him to defend himself, saying that potentially Ryan Routh should not have defended himself, not have his own counsel
I thought they stopped that.
We'll get into all of these details in a little bit. Let's turn our attention back to the case as the verdict coming down. It was guilty across the board for Ryan Routh, the man accused in the shooting or would-be assassination of the then candidate Donald Trump, as this was the kind of verdict slip. It was guilty on all of these counts, including attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate, possession of a firearm, and furtherance of a crime of violence, assaulting a federal officer, and the list goes on. But it wasn't the only major development today, as this was the court sketch inside of that courtroom in Fort Pierce, Florida, as the man who attempted to assassinate Donald Trump at a Florida golf course last year tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen shortly after being found guilty of all counts on Tuesday. Let's bring to the conversation right now legal analyst friend of the program, Jeremy Rosenthal. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, this verdict might not have been surprising. The impact the event immediately after was. What's our big takeaway today?
He was fired just 3 weeks before he was set to retire.
And now he's becoming an industry whistleblower.
Look, anytime you have a really bizarre trial like this, I don't think it's a big surprise to anybody ultimately what happened. This was a layup for the government. If you're a federal prosecutor, if you're a U.S. attorney, you kind of don't want to have this case because all you can really do is screw it up. And in this instance, obviously, they got their guilty verdict. It was a very easy one for them. You had a pro se, meaning a man on the other side who represented himself. And if there's an issue going forward, it's going to be, should he have been allowed to represent himself? Trying a case is a really hard thing. Having a jury trial is a very hard thing. Imagine trying to teach a college level course, and every time you take a break, there's somebody who comes in, a professor who comes in and tells the class and teaches the class why everything you just said is wrong. And then you do that for 2 or 3 weeks. It's very hard, very difficult, very intricate to try to defend a case like this. And to do it on your own, you're simply never going to be successful on it. Maybe a traffic ticket at best. Other than that, again, I don't think the verdict was surprising one bit, and we'll see if he's able to have any headway on appeal. There's probably an issue there, but no shock from where I think anybody's standing.
Yeah, and of course, the kind of government, the prosecution rested their case the end of last week. He got the case this week, and then deliberations took just a short amount of time. There was standby counsel on hand, and usually when we're talking about people and defendants, they're not asked, not told to take the stand.
What I'm trying to understand is this, right? Is that they don't like Trump and they white, Mo. They don't like him, dog. They keep trying to get that man out the way, man. That's why, Joe, he got to have bulletproof everything, bro. Because they try to get that man out the mother way, Joe. It's not a game, dog. That's crazy.
Obviously, they have that right, but it was somewhat interesting that he was representing himself, and then he also didn't take the stand. Did that catch you by surprise at all?
That's a pretty interesting point, because if you're Ryan Routh, how else are you going to try to win this case, right? How else are you going to try to show the jury that there's a reasonable doubt? Not that the burden shifts to him, but usually, typically, if you are of the mindset that you're going to make this stage all about you, you're going to get up and you're going to testify. In this instance, what the government has to prove, or what they had to prove here, was that there was an attempt to take the life of a major presidential candidate. And when you're looking at an attempt crime, what you're looking at for is a plan plus one overt or a substantial act or step towards that goal, right? If you're talking about robbing a bank and then you actually go out and arrange for a getaway car, that would be an instance. And in this instance, he had written a note that he was going to do this. He was waiting for 10 hours. He had a rifle. The DNA.
So, dog, he wrote a note. He waited for 10 hours, and he talked about this, dog. You feel me? He already knew he was going to do this to Donald Trump, bro. The man laid at the golf course, dog, for 10 hours and waited for that man, dog. That's crazy, dog. Hey, I don't want to be no president, man. Fuck that job.
They matched. And when all of these things are presented, look, the burden doesn't shift to him to prove your innocence, but if you're going to get out of this, you gotta tell your story why. And if you're representing yourself, you're really not going to be very good at presenting other evidence. You're not going to be good at cross-examining other witnesses. What are you going to be good at all, really? You might be able to tell your story at most, and then he didn't do that. So, yeah, kind of a surprise there.
Yeah, and I don't know, based on some of the previous motions that he put forward, the questions during jury selection, that it would have been somewhat entertaining or comical, just peculiar to see what he would have said on the stand, but I don't know if it moved the needle at all in terms of the jury. Let's talk about this major moment moment, though, that happened immediately after the verdict came down, in which he grabbed a pen and then tried to stab himself in the neck. The officers quickly swarmed him, dragged him out of the courtroom, and obviously this is what the sketch is showing there of this moment. And we know that standby counsel was on hand. What do we make of this? Is there going to be extra security around Ryan Routh moving forward? Is that something the judge levies to make sure that he's not trying to kill himself again, potentially?
He would almost certainly be on some kind of suicide watch, and that's typical after a guilty verdict anyway. But I don't think there's any reason that they're going to allow him to be around anything like that. He still has sentencing to go. There's going to be a pre-sentencing investigation, and sentencing is going to be on December the 18th. This may trigger Judge Cannon to disallow.
They gonna burn him. They found him guilty for all 5 accounts of the charge that they gave him. They gonna burn that man, Joe. That's why that man tried to stab himself in the neck with that pen, because he know they about to give him that time for trying to kill Donald Trump, Mo. This is crazy. I never knew this, dog, but see, this all comes from doing investigations. You got to do your investigation, dog. You got to find out what's going on in the world. See, I never knew that somebody tried to kill this man twice. Is that twice or 3 times? Don't worry about it. I'm going to figure it out for y'all. But listen, I did not know that, man. The man tried to take the pen and stab himself in the neck when they gave him that time, dog. When they found him guilty on all 5 of them charges, dog. Make sure y'all twist up for me too. We lit
him from representing himself. This action, you have a right to represent yourself in a criminal case. That right's not absolute, and the judge can revoke that if it's sort of just overly disruptive to the proceedings. And if they can't put him in a room where he can be trusted with a pen or a pencil or something like that, then I don't see how they could really, how the judge could really trust him to try the case or to finish off the case. Because the pretrial, the sentencing in this case is a really, really big part of the case that is not yet done. And in a lot of federal criminal cases, that's really, frankly, the biggest issue and the only issue that you're trying the case over. Most of these cases in the federal system are slam dunks just like this. And the sentencing is again a really major component. And if he is of this mindset, and if you can't trust him to be around other people like this, then I think that's a pretty big problem, because he will have to meet with federal probation officers. He will have to do some additional work to prepare his defense for sentencing. That part's not yet done, so I don't know that the judge is going to let him continue as his own lawyer.
I want to ask you, because we see this moment happening. Even his kids in there were kind of crying out, saying, "Dad, don't do this in this way." In terms of the appeal process, does the fact that this happened make the judge go back and say, "Hey, maybe I should have stepped in, so we should have made counsel be there for him prior"? Does this change anything in terms of the appeal process and having the fact that he represented himself and potentially mental issues, that's the like? Do you think that could help his case in the appeals?
My name is Whitney Allen. I'm a widow, and my husband, Ryan, died when he was 35 years old.
I think, unfortunately, Andy, I think you're exactly right. The big issue that he has going for him now, frankly, the only issue he's got going for him is what is called a Feretta motion. When you ask to defend yourself in federal court, the court does what's called a Feretta analysis. You have a Sixth Amendment right to be your own lawyer. And when you do that, the judge has to make sure that you understand everything that's going on, and that you understand that you're responsible for behaving like a lawyer. You're responsible for all the objections. You don't get any special preferential treatment over the other party in the case, and that you are responsible for your legal defense and everything that entails. Functionally, the equivalent of performing surgery. In this instance, it would be on yourself to sort of expound it. And if you don't have the mental capacity to do that in the first place, then that can be very, very problematic. But how do we know if somebody's got the mental capacity to do this or not? That's the really hard question to answer. And if on appeal, he can establish, or his lawyers, you don't actually have a right to represent yourself on appeal. So his appeals lawyers will almost certainly argue, look, he didn't have the wherewithal to try this case. And if they're right, if they're able to win on those grounds, then he would almost certainly get a new trial. And yes, the fact that he is acting out in this manner will almost certainly be pointed to by his appeals lawyer saying, look, this guy never had the marbles to defend himself in the first place. It's one thing to somebody wants to make their own political statement. It's something if somebody wants to kind of turn the court into their own showroom. If they understand what's going on, unfortunately, they're allowed to do that. But then again, you have people, if you've got a criminal defendant who wants to talk about his banana boat and his banana phone and his banana car and is just out of their mind, then that person probably has no business representing themselves, and the judge probably should not have granted that Ferretta motion. That will almost certainly be the grounds for his appeal.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. And you mentioned the fact that if this moves forward, obviously the appeals process will play out, but the sentencing could be important in certain dynamics. Can you get into that? Explain that for us.
The federal sentencing guidelines are what dictates here, and it's essentially a grid or a matrix, and it's literally a graph with an x-axis and a y-axis, and the x-axis is going to be your criminal history. Have you ever been in trouble before? The answer with Mr. Routh is yes. He is a convicted felon, and he was convicted of dangerous felonies too, I believe, with explosives. And the other axis is the severity of the crime that you've been convicted of here, which again is going to qualify very, very highly because this carries up to a life sentence, the attempted assassination of a major political candidate. So what's going to happen is when you put him on the grid and you put him on the matrix, he's going to wind up on the very far right-hand side and the very lower portion, which is not where you want to be. Meaning that Judge Cannon would almost certainly be able to put him in prison, if not for life, pretty close.
All right, we'll see what happens there. And I just had another question, kind of circling back one more time to this incident, this acting out in courtroom, because we did see his kids there, and we did get video of them. They weren't talking to the media or whatnot. Is there anything potentially they can do to step in to say, hey, maybe this individual should have a lawyer present? Is there something that they can do to kind of step in since they are family, since they are related to this individual?
I think tragically for Mr. Routh, I think the damage is done. When you have your trial, that's your day in court. And in this instance, if he's got a screw loose, if there's that lack of mental capacity, the time to complain about it was a month, 2 months, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Going forward, he will have the right to appeal. Now, when you represent yourself, that's one of the big problems. It's one of the major reasons that you don't really do that, is because, again, kind of going back to the beginning of our discussion, if you're the U.S. attorney, if you're the federal prosecutor, all you stand to gain is potentially screwing it up. You are expected to win this case, and you're expected to win it big, not only because the evidence in this case is overwhelming, but because you've got a person on the other side who doesn't know any of the rules, and who, if you do make a mistake, isn't going to be prepared to catch you in that mistake, which is a major part of trial advocacy and trial law. So a lot of the issue, if the government did make mistakes, if they made missteps and if they made errors here, they all went unchecked. Those errors are what are called waived because the defendant either didn't object or he didn't object properly. But again, going back to that singular issue, which is really out of the prosecution's control, it is whether the judge should have allowed him to represent himself. And it's quite possible she made the exact right call. Because just because he is not completely off his rocker doesn't mean that she's wrong. If he understood and appreciated all of the rights that he was waiving by representing himself, then she made the right call, because legally he does have the constitutional right to defend himself.
All right, very good. Jeremy, thank you so much explaining there. Obviously very understanding, but the verdict coming down all guilty across the board for Ryan Routh. Thank you again. I appreciate your time, as always, here on Live Now.
Have a great day.
All right, thanks so much. All right, great conversation as always. And the would-be assassin there of then candidate Donald Trump as he's facing these 5 charges, found guilty by a jury. And it was a very quick case there. And you can see this from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, saying today's guilty verdict against would-be Trump assassin Ryan Routh illustrates the Department of Justice's commitment to punishing those who engage in political violence. This attempted assassination was not only an attack on our president, but an affront to our very nation itself. I am grateful to our U.S. attorney there, his entire trial team, and our law enforcement partners for protecting President Trump and securing this important verdict. All right, we're following that closely here on Live Now from Fox, and we'll keep our update on when that sentencing comes down in several months' time. Of course, we'll keep an eye on it here on Live Now from Fox moving forward.
So many men think they need to completely cut out alcohol to get lean for the summer, but they're dead wrong. This is what Orland looked like.
Of course, it was hard.
I'm tapping in. So listen, I just gave y'all 30 minutes of the rundown of Ryan Routh that tried to kill Donald Trump, that laid at his golf course and waited for him for 10 hours and tried to take that man out, man. The world is going crazy. So y'all better catch up, man. Go home. The world is going bonkers, man. And thank y'all for tapping into that Yocuzpodcast podcast. Make sure y'all subscribe, like, and hit that like button. Hit that like button and hit that like button and drop a comment after this episode. I'm gone.